Four teams are about to bring their biggest upgrades of the season to the same race weekend. Ferrari is landing a third foundational aerodynamic package. Honda is bolting a redesigned engine into the back of an Aston Martin that was 4 seconds off the pace 3 months ago. Alpine has gone 7 races without a single new part and is arriving with what its own managing director called pretty big new aero. McLaren is deploying the second half of the development package that just won them Hungary. All of that is arriving at Zandvoort on the 21st of August, the first race after the summer shutdown, on a sprint weekend with 60 minutes of practice, at a circuit that disappears from the Formula One calendar forever the moment the checkered flag drops. This is not a normal restart. This is the most upgrade-loaded weekend of the 2026 season, landing on the single worst format for validating new parts, at a track where the North Sea gets to decide how much sand sits on the racing line, and where every conclusion any team draws from the data becomes uncheckable because the circuit will never host another Grand Prix again. And every one of these teams chose it anyway. Start with what the calendar actually looks like after the summer break, and the problem comes into focus fast. The mandatory factory shutdown runs through the first weeks of August. No work, no wind tunnel hours spent on race preparation, no engineers in the building running simulations against live track data. When the shutdown lifts, there are roughly 10 working days before the freight has to ship to the Netherlands. That is the window Ferrari, Honda, Alpine, and McLaren have to finish building parts, sign them off, and pack them into crates heading for a 4.259-kilometer strip of asphalt carved into the Dutch sand dunes. Under normal circumstances, a team bringing a major upgrade to a race weekend gets 3 practice sessions. 3 hours across Friday and Saturday to bolt the new parts on, run aero rakes behind the car, compare the data against the wind tunnel predictions, adjust the setup, run again, and confirm whether the package is doing what it was designed to do before qualifying puts points on the line. Zandvoort is a sprint weekend. There is 1 practice session, 60 minutes on Friday morning, then sprint qualifying, then the sprint race on Saturday, which is 24 laps and scores championship points, then full qualifying, and then the Grand Prix on Sunday. Every session after that first hour counts toward the result. So the question every team bringing new parts has to answer before they leave the factory is not whether the upgrade is fast. It is whether they trust it enough to race it after a single hour of running on a surface they have not driven since last August, with wind conditions they cannot predict, and track evolution that will change the grip level between the morning and the afternoon in ways that make the first hour of data borderline unreliable for the sessions that follow. That is the exam, and every team sitting in it chose to show up. Ferrari's plan is the one the paddock has been watching since Hungary. Charles Leclerc stood in the Hungaroring paddock after finishing 4th, a race he should not have finished 4th in given that his car topped both Friday practice sessions and said the single most important thing any driver said all weekend. That upgrades in this championship make teams take such a big step forward when they land, that staying on top of development is everything, and that Ferrari would see how it goes in Zandvoort. Read that line back, and it tells you exactly where the next package is pointed without naming a single part. What Leclerc did not say, and what the Italian press filled in within 24 hours, came from Giuliano Duchesa, a working Formula One journalist with an FIA pass, co-founder of the Italian outlet Formula 1.1, and a technical writer for Corriere della Sera. The reporting was short enough to fit in a sentence. Aerodynamic upgrades at Zandvoort, the second ADUO engine token likely at Monza. That makes Zandvoort the third foundational aero package Ferrari has brought in 11 races. Loic Serra's engineering department under the Chassis Technical Directorate is reportedly treating this not as a refinement, but as a platform-level change, the kind of upgrade that reshapes the operating window of the car rather than shaving a tenth off one corner. Autoracer, the Italian outlet, reported it as another major upgrade package, which is the language teams use when the floor, the bodywork, and the aerodynamic surfaces around them are all changing together. And Ferrari chose to bring it here, to a circuit that loads the floor harder than almost anything else on the calendar. 14 corners folded into the dunes, 18 degrees of banking at the final Arie Luyendyk turn that catapults the car onto the straight with forces no other track on the schedule replicates. Zandvoort is a circuit where downforce decides everything and straight-line speed barely gets to vote. If you have built a floor that makes more load through long committed high-energy corners and you want to know whether it works, this is the track that gives you the clearest answer. The problem is that the answer arrives in a single hour of practice and then vanishes from the calendar forever. There is a second layer to Ferrari's plan that makes Zandvoort even more important than the parts they are bringing to it. The aero package is Stage 1. Stage 2 is the redesigned turbocharger that uses Ferrari's final ADUO development token, and by every account, that is the bigger swing. The turbocharger is expected at Monza 2 weeks later, the fastest and most power-hungry track on the calendar, Ferrari's home ground, and the one circuit where a 20 to 30 horsepower deficit to Mercedes stops being a technical footnote and becomes something 300,000 tifosi can see with their own eyes. But a turbocharger at Monza only matters if the car underneath it is competitive. That is what Zandvoort is for. If the aero package works, Monza becomes a race where the engine step lands on a chassis that can actually use it. If the aero package does not work, or if the sprint format means Ferrari cannot unlock it in time, then the turbocharger arrives 2 weeks later on a car that is still quick on Fridays and beaten on Sundays. Ferrari has done that more than once this season. The SF26 topped both practice sessions in Hungary and left with 4th and 5th. It arrived at Spa looking fast and left with Leclerc squeezing Piastri into contact and Hamilton picking up a penalty. Vasseur said after Budapest that the team had simply made too many mistakes and that they had to do a far better job. A new floor does not fix operational mistakes, but a floor that protects the rear tires through long, high-energy corners does fix the tire degradation that keeps turning fast Fridays into slow Sundays. And that is the bet Ferrari is placing on a sand dune circuit with 1 hour to prove it right. While Ferrari is gambling on aerodynamics, Aston Martin's gamble runs deeper than Ferrari's. Honda's upgraded RA626H power unit ran for the first time at the Hungaroring filming day, July 29th, reportedly eliminating the battery vibrations that made Aston Martin the season's slowest team. Reported gains range from 30 brake horsepower, motorsport.com, to 50+, Motorsport Italy's Franco Nugnes. Alonso called Zandvoort a very interesting test of where the team stands. A notable understatement from a driver who, after Belgium, said the current hybrid engine felt weaker than Formula 2 when the battery failed to deploy. Honda heard him. ADUO made this possible. Honda's engine measured over 4% behind the Red Bull Ford benchmark, placing it alongside Ferrari and Audi in the deepest relief band, 2 upgrade tokens plus $4.65 million in cost cap relief. Zandvoort's engine spends the first token. The risk, this upgrade lands atop another still unproven. In Hungary, Adrian Newey's team brought a 16-part chassis overhaul, new nose, front wing, end plates, brake ducts, 4 floor revisions, and more. The results were immediate. Alonso reached Q2 for the first time all season. Both cars finished top 14, and Aston Martin jumped from last to fighting Alpine, Haas, and Williams. Now that freshly transformed chassis must absorb an entirely new engine spec at a sprint weekend with just 60 minutes to integrate it all. Clean integration could deliver Aston Martin's first points of 2026 and give Alonso the data to decide his future in the sport. A messy one means 2 overlapping upgrades tangling in ways that take weeks to unpick, and Alonso's decision may get made for him by default. Alpine, once the midfield leader, has gone 7 races without a single upgrade since Miami, while Aston Martin, Racing Bulls, and Audi all gained ground. They've now slipped behind Racing Bulls, with Audi closing in. Managing director Steve Nielsen has confirmed a major aero upgrade for Zandvoort, and Pierre Gasly called it critical to keeping 5th in the Constructors' Championship alive. Gasly also flagged the deeper worry. This mirrors Alpine's 2022-2025 decline when an early season lead eroded into a back-of-the-grid finish through stalled development. Zandvoort will show whether the new parts break that cycle or repeat it. If you want the second half of this season broken down like this every week, every upgrade, every engine step, every decision that actually shapes the championship, subscribe and stay with the channel. Zandvoort is the start of the most important stretch of races this season will produce, and the story that comes out of it runs all the way to Abu Dhabi. McLaren arrives at Zandvoort already validated. The first half of a 2-part upgrade landed in Hungary, ending Mercedes' 10-pole streak and lifting Norris from best of the rest to pole and victory in one weekend. Per the race, the Zandvoort package builds directly on that proven platform, meaning McLaren is iterating on a known success, unlike Ferrari's floor gamble or Honda's engine gamble from a standing start. That contrast sets up Zandvoort's real question. Does momentum beat teams saving their biggest swings for the restart? Underlying these stories is ADUO, additional development and upgrade opportunities, the FIA's 2026 mechanism preventing any one engine maker from dominating the new formula. Torque sensors on the rear half shafts measure each combustion engine's real output, converted into a performance index against the leader. After the first measurement window, post-Canada, Red Bull Ford, the newest program, topped the index. Mercedes trailed by over 2%. Ferrari, Honda, and Audi all sat more than 4% back, qualifying them for the deepest relief tier, 2 upgrade tokens per season, up to $4.65 million in extra cost cap allowance, and added bench testing hours. The result? 3 of 5 engine makers are deploying catch-up upgrades in the same 3-race window. Ferrari targets its turbo at Zandvoort or Monza. Honda brings a full power unit revision to Zandvoort. Audi, already having ditched its own rear wing concept mid-testing to copy a rival's, has both the tokens and the appetite to act. The FIA's convergence system is working exactly as designed, but its effects are all landing simultaneously, by accident, on a sprint weekend at a shrinking circuit, meaning 72 laps at Zandvoort could reshape the Constructors' Championship. There is a layer to the Zandvoort weekend that has nothing to do with aerodynamics or engine tokens, and it sits in the grandstands rather than the garages. This is the final Dutch Grand Prix. The organizers announced the race would end after 2026 because they could no longer make the finances work. 5 years of Formula One returning to Zandvoort, 300,000 spectators per weekend, a sea of orange in the dunes, and the money still does not add up. The farewell includes a first-ever sprint race on Dutch soil, which the organizers specifically requested for the final edition, and a performance from Martin Garrix. Max Verstappen has won 3 of the 5 Dutch Grand Prix held since the circuit returned. He is the reason the race exists. The Dutch Grand Prix came back because Verstappen turned the Netherlands into an F1 nation, and it is leaving because the commercial model behind it cannot sustain itself, even with the most popular driver on the grid filling every seat. And Verstappen arrives at his own farewell weekend in a Red Bull that cannot compete with the top 3 teams, sitting 7th in the Drivers' Championship, with a performance clause in his contract now active because he was not in the top 2 by the summer break. He has until reportedly October to decide whether to leave Red Bull. Mercedes and McLaren are both interested. Laurent Mekies, the Red Bull team principal, has said publicly that only race-winning speed will keep Verstappen. So the final Dutch Grand Prix may also be the final time Max Verstappen races at Zandvoort in a Red Bull car. That is not a footnote to the upgrade story. It is the emotional backdrop against which every team will be running new parts, and it is the reason the weekend will carry a weight that goes well beyond the points scored on Sunday. One problem no upgrade can fix: Zandvoort's data becomes permanently unverifiable once the weekend ends. Normally, engineers cross-check on-track results against wind tunnel and CFD predictions across 5 to 6 similar circuits per season, refining conclusions each time. Zandvoort offers no repeat visit, no 2027 return with a cleaner read. Whatever's measured August 21st to 23rd can never be checked against the same conditions again. That creates a diagnostic trap. A floor that underperforms might genuinely not work, or it might just need a setup window teams couldn't find in 60 minutes of practice. On a sand-dusted surface with shifting coastal winds throwing off aero balance between runs. Both scenarios produce identical data on the day but demand opposite responses. Scrap the package or keep refining it elsewhere. Guess wrong, and a team either burns resources chasing a fix that doesn't exist or discards an upgrade that was actually fine. That's Zandvoort's real danger in 2026, not that upgrades will fail, since they always do sometimes, but that under conditions this compressed and unrepeatable, failure and success become nearly indistinguishable from each other. Here's what to watch. For Ferrari, ignore speed traps. Watch Sector 2, the dune section middle sector, where the new floor either generates load or doesn't. Matching or beating Antonelli's Mercedes, there means the package works. A gap means the floor isn't correlating with tunnel data, with 11 races left to diagnose why. For Honda and Aston Martin, compare against their own Hungary baseline, not rivals. Check main straight trap speeds versus Budapest. If they've closed up, the claimed 30 to 50 horsepower is real. For Alpine, watch Gasly's grid position. Back inside the top 10 means the decline is arrested. Qualifying where he has the last 4 races confirms the 2022 pattern is repeating. For McLaren, watch the gap to Mercedes. Hungary closed it to 0. Holding or shrinking that gap at a high downforce track makes McLaren a genuine title contender. A reopened gap makes Hungary look like a one-off. For Verstappen, watch the opening lap of his final Dutch Grand Prix, a car that can't fight at the front, a live exit clause, 105,000 fans in his colors. That first lap will reveal what kind of weekend he's chosen to have, and maybe what he's decided about next year. Step back, and Zandvoort is really testing whether F1's development war can function under conditions the sport itself created. Sprint weekends, ADUO, the summer shutdown, and Zandvoort's farewell format were each designed separately, never meant to collide. But they have, producing a weekend demanding the season's biggest technical calls with the least prep time, at a circuit offering no second chance, in weather that shifts off the sea. Ferrari bets 1 hour validates a new floor. Honda bets a redesigned engine integrates cleanly with an unfamiliar chassis. Alpine bets 7 races of stagnation haven't cost too much ground. McLaren bets momentum holds. Every bet lands on a circuit closing forever behind them. In 3 weeks, 10 teams arrive on the Dutch coast for the last time, carrying more new parts than any weekend this season, with 60 minutes to learn if any of it works before points start counting. Zandvoort has always rewarded the brave and punished the wrong. On August 21st, it does both one final time. Then the evidence vanishes into the sand. If you want the technical breakdown of every upgrade the moment it hits the track and the data that tells you which ones actually worked, subscribe. This story starts at Zandvoort, and it does not stop until December.